Welcome to Highline Excel class video number 45. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on my YouTube channel and click on my college website link, and you can download the workbook week 8, Business 214. If you're enrolled in the class, just go to our class website. Hey, we're still talking about index and match. Our last video we did the basics of index and match. Now we want to see 11 amazing uses. One great use for the index is if you want to add up all of March sales and you have data set up like this. We want just these values. If we select this to February, we want just these. Now there's lots of ways you could do this. You could use this with offset or indirect function. But those are volatile functions, and some people don't like those. Great way to get around this with the index. The index function not only can look at a table and do an intersecting single value, but if you put a 0 into a row argument and give it a column number, it'll return in the entire column from the table. So here, if we gave it 0 row, and this is column 2, it would return all this. So let's see how to do that. We'll do it inside the sum because we want to add this column, and then index. The array is going to be the whole thing, comma, and then the row number. Remember, row number, if we put a 0 here, it says give me a whole column. Now technically what it does, this whole column, it's actually, we're going to give it 1 to the second column, and then the 0 says give me all the rows in that second column. So either way you think of it is fine. If you want to think of the 0 as giving you a whole column of values or all the rows in that particular column, perfectly all right. Match, and what are we going to match? This, comma, with these values here, which are going to give us either 1, 2, 3, 4, comma 0, because we've got an exact match. Close parentheses. Close parentheses again, and there we have the index closed off, close parentheses again, and we get the sum. So there it is. The only trick was that. So notice row number 0 gives us the whole column or all the rows in whatever column it is. Control, or just enter. Let's change it. Sure enough, January gives us 5, and March gives us that. Now, this was a whole column. What about the whole row? Equals sum index. And the whole set of values is going to be that right there. That's the array. Now the row number, well, we need comma, and now we need we got to give it a row number. So match that one right there in all of these values, comma 0, close parentheses. So we have index array, the row number, now the column number, and here's the trick. Comma and 0. That says, please give me a whole row, or please give me all the columns in whatever row number we give it. I'm going to close parentheses on the sum, and then enter. So what's happening here is we're giving it March, which means the third row, and the 0 says, hey, give me all the columns in that third row. And sure enough, it adds just perfectly if I change this to January. And that is better than a lot of other methods, not volatile. I've in videos used lots of offset and indirect, but this index trick with the 0, that is just an amazing trick. Hey, let's go on and look at our next index trick. Here we have a scores and decimal grades for a VLOOKUP. Let's go ahead and do our VLOOKUP right here. Equals VLOOKUP. I'm going to look up this score, comma, table array. There it is. Comma, and the column index number. I'm returning something from the second column. Comma, and I don't need the last argument because we're looking up approximate. And then enter. 0. Uh-oh, look what's happening. This is not sorted in ascending, so it's going from biggest to smallest. VLOOKUP gets mixed up if you do it this way. Now, no problem. We could just sort it, right? Right-click sort. In this version, I can right-click sort and get the A to Z, and it works just fine. Aha, Control Z on that. Sometimes you need to have your table set up from biggest to smallest, descending. So you're printing this out and giving it out, whether it's for grades or some ranking. You want to have the biggest one at the top. you cannot use VLOOKUP. But you don't want to retype or create a bunch of formulas down here to recreate this. So you can just flip it with the index. So I'm going to highlight the whole table, and in the active cell, say equals index. And I'm going to highlight this whole range right here. Actually, no, I'm going to highlight just this column. Very carefully, I'm going to hit the F4 key to lock it going down. Because when I copy this index down, I want it locked on that. I'm going to flip all these values so I'll get 0, 270, 300, 354, and 450. But because I didn't put any dollar signs in front of the column reference, when I move it over here, that blue dancing ants right now will move over to this column. Comma. And the trick is, right now we need at the top here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need a 6, but when we copy it down, we need it to move to 5 and then to 4. So we'll use our good old rows. And I'm going to highlight all these rows, close parentheses. The trick here is if we lock this 7 with the F4 key twice, row reference, that means that's locked, A7. A2 is not. So when it copies down, this A2 will move to A3. So then it will give us 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Close parentheses. Now I have the whole table highlighted. Control Enter, and that table is flipped. Now I can fix my VLOOKUP based on this table. And everything's working just fine. The beauty of this is I can print this out. I have this table linked up there I use for my grades or ranking or whatever. And if I want to change something up here, 425, it works just fine. This changes down here. The 425 is right there. The 425 for printing is still there. Now, just a quick reminder, I have something right here. I always have cool notes. We've seen this row tricks a bunch of times. We've seen rows where we lock the first one, so it's I2 to I2, and as you copy it down, this one remains locked, but this one gets bigger. That gives you 1 to 6. This trick we just did, cell reference not locked, the first one, but the second one is locked, gives you the bigger number to the smaller number. So these are very important tricks for incrementing numbers, small to big or big to small, inside of formulas. Next index trick. How about randomly selecting a name? Equals, we'll use index. Oh, index could just do so many things. We highlight that, comma, and remember, all it wants is a row number. So we just need to randomly generate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, numbers between 1 and 5. Now you could use rand between if you have 2007 or the analysis tool pack. I'll tell you something though, comma to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have had nothing but trouble with rand between over the years. I don't care what version I am in. It is one of the most troublesome functions I've ever had. Just the other day, it turned into a bad text function because I went from one computer to the next. It's just horrible. So I like to use instead int rand, open parentheses, close parentheses, times 5, because we have 5 values. Now the way this works is rand gives you 0 to 1. So 0.5, if it gives us 0.5 times 5, gives us 2.5, which then the integer of that is 2, because integer always goes down. The problem is, if rand gets really close to 0, almost 0 times 5 would be almost 0, and int will give us a 0, and we don't want that, so we have to add 1. Close parentheses, and that index, looking up there with this random row generator, will work just fine. So now if I hit the F9 key, it randomly selects the name. Now what if you want to select some names for in a certain order, but you don't want any repeats? Now if you don't have more Func Excel add-in, you'll have to click on this link, Magic Trick 276 more Func, or you can just search for more Func Excel, and it shows you how to download this add-in to get the mrand function. Highlight the whole range, equals index. Our whole array is the same one here, comma. And then the way mrand, we need to randomly generate row numbers. Mrand is an array function. I've highlighted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells. So if I put mrand, close parentheses, right now when I Control-Shift-Enter, mrand will give us between 0 and 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need to add 1 to get 1 to 5. Close parentheses, and you have to Control-Shift-Enter and highlight all the cells in advance. And sure enough, we get names selected without repeating, randomly selected. I'm going to hit the F9 key. That mrand, that is just such an incredible function for getting numbers and not having repeats. Okay, next index trick. Here we have on sheet I7, we have some products and some vendors, and we have bids for all of these here. So I've done a min function here, and we want to do an index. Not to look up the small value, because the min will do that. We want to find the min within, let's say we're right here. We want to find the min within here, which would be the first item in this range right here. If we highlight this, the min would be 1, 2, 3. So we can do find this, the match, tell match to find this one, this. It'll give us column 3. And if we have the lookup array as this vendor name, as these vendor names, it'll always give us the vendor for low bid. I'm going to highlight the whole range, and in the top cell, actually better scroll over, equals index. Now you could just put your min here. I've put it in a cell because I wanted to see the low bid. I'm sorry. That's the match. We got to get our values. Array. We want to look through these values, find the lowest value, which would be right here, and then return the so we're going to click here and do our index. The array, the thing we're looking up is the vendors, comma, and then we just all we need is a row number. Now we'll use match. And we could use a min. We could actually build it right here, but I want to see the low bid, so I put it in a cell right there. That's the thing we're looking up for match. And then we're looking in amongst what numbers? Those ones right there. Comma 0. We are looking up an exact match. Close parentheses, close parentheses. Now, a couple things here. I need to lock this, because that vendor range needs to be locked going down. And we do have a slight problem with duplicates. Control Enter, double click and send it down. I've added conditional formatting to show duplicates. Now I have a video at YouTube that shows you how to return. It would be in a pretty big array formula to have multiple vendors return. But by adding conditional formatting, and if you highlight this and Alt-O-D, the conditional formatting for show values that are duplicates is pretty simple. COUNTIF, the whole range, and then a relative cell reference, the first one, the active cell, when it's greater than 1. So if I hit F9 here and start randomizing, they very rarely are showing up in the same row. But if they do, if I there it is. Oh no, that's a different one. But if they do with the conditional formatting, then I can, because it's a rare occurrence that I get an exact match, at least I have Excel telling me with conditional formatting that there is 2 vendors here, and I could take a look. Let's look at a similar but slightly different example here. We have max some scores here, and here's our max function. And we want to look up, whoops, I got it wrong here. We want to look up the student name with the max score. So I'm going to say equals index. What are we looking up? Oh, the student names, Control-Shift down arrow, comma. Oh, and we just need a row number again. It's a simple match matter. And I have my max here because I want to see it, so I hit comma. And where are the values that the max might be amongst? Those ones right there. Comma 0, close parentheses, Control Enter. So if I hit my F9 key, oh, I don't. Let's just say this poor student got a 1, but no, they got a 99. Does it update? Sure enough. And we'll go on to our next trick. All right, in this trick here, we want to use index and match to look up the difference, or how far we have to go from our particular sales to the next category in a commission table. Now, we've seen this commission table a few times in this week of lookups. But here it is. If I have sales of $99,999, how far do I have to go to the next bracket? Well, 1 penny. If this is 15,000, how far do I have to go to get to the next bracket from 10? Somewhere in between here. I need to go from up to 20 is 5,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to use index and match. So we're going to click here, equals index. And first I want to just see if I can get the next value right here. Because the way index and match work so far is if we say 15,000, it returns 20,000. And we really want to, oh, sorry, for 15,000, it returns 10,000. We really want it to return the next one. So for index, I'm going to highlight this whole range right here, comma, and then match. We're looking up this value right here, comma, amongst all these values. Comma, oh, we don't need a comma because we are doing approximate. Close parentheses. Close parentheses. Let's just see what it returns right here. Well, just as we thought, the 10,000, but we want 20,000. No problem. All we have to do is, since match right here, if I'm highlighting this and hitting the F9 key, giving us a 3 and we want a 4, Control Z, we just add 1. Now it gives her 20,000, and we can simply take that, whatever it returns, and always subtract the 15,000, close parentheses. So now if I test this, 99 cents gives me 1 penny. If I give 49,000, then it gives us the $1,000. So 49,000 up to this. All right. Next trick, how about retrieving every 5th value? So we need a formula here to retrieve this one, and then this one, and then this one. So the pattern is we have some sort of a space and then some numbers and like adding, right? And then a space. So it's every 5th value we want to return. So what we're going to do is, of course, we'll use index equals index. And I'm going to highlight the one space above all the way down to the last value. The pattern is every 5th. And you can use this for whatever application, whenever there's every 10th or 7th or whatever. I'm going to hit the F4 key to lock it going down, comma. And how do we get, in essence, 5 and then 10? Well, we can use the rows function we just saw a little bit ago. I'm sitting in cell C4, so I'll put C $4 colon C4. That'll give us 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. How about 1, 2, 3 times 5? Now, the 5 is sitting in cell D4. Right there, D4. That's the 5, and we need to lock it going down. So this gives us 1, 2, 3, always multiplied by 5, which means 1 times 5 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10. Close parentheses, Control Enter, and then double click and drag it down. And sure enough, it's working. If I change this to 100, we can see that now it's still getting that value. If I change this one to 12, we can see that 16 went to 27. So every 5th value. Next trick. All right, trick 10. Now this is going to be a big, complicated array formula here. If you want to just skip over this one and move 5 minutes forward, you can go to our last trick. But I got to show you this because it is just a great use of the index. Here's a situation. We have a database, date, sample weight, location, and the person who did the sampling. And we want to extract given 2 criteria. So the location is going to be 4, location 4, and name is Alice. And we want to be able to just change this to location 2. Lung, and then have the 6 records. You see there's a formula here. 6 records from here populate this area. Now there's lots of ways to extract records. You could do it with advanced filter. You can do it with filter, copy, and then paste. So lots of excellent, much simpler ways to do this. But sometimes people need a dynamic setup like this with a formula delivering extracted records, and so this trick will work. All right, I'm going to highlight this range here. And the first trick is, how are we going to count unique records? And this data set goes down a way, so about over 600 records. And we're going to need a unique count So here's our two criteria, and we need to have a formula that looks through the whole 600 plus records and finds location 2 Lung and tells us how many there are. Let's look at a formula here. This is one that works in 2007 and is, if you have a choice, probably the best, fastest calculating one amongst counting with more than one criteria. COUNTIFs, it has the range of names. There's the criteria. And then the range of locations. And then there's the criteria. I'm going to click Escape. If you're in earlier versions, probably this one. Sum product. It's just looking through the locations, the range right there, and saying, is it equal to this criteria? And then the range of names and saying, is it equal to that criteria? And then the double negative turns the trues and falses to ones and zeros. And then the sum product multiplies them to get a unique count. OK, let's do our formula. I've done this one various other videos here. But during this class, I do want to show you this. We're going to start with if. And the first thing we have to do is turn on and off the formula. When it gets past 6 rows down here, below 6, we want it to show a blank. Otherwise, we want it to run the index, which will retrieve the records for us. So I'm going to say if rows, and I'm sitting in F22. So F $22 colon F22 close parentheses. If that's less than or equal to our count here, and I'm going to need to hit the F4 key, that's locked in all directions. If it's still less, meaning the rows, then we want to run our index. And so in comma index. Now the array, we want the date column and the sample weight. I'm going to scroll over here. So we first want to highlight the whole date column. Click on the top, Control Shift down arrow, and then F4. And I'm going to hit F4 twice. Now it's locked only in front of the row reference. So as we copy it down, the date column will extract the proper dates. But when this range, when we move the formula, copy it over here, it will move to the sample weight because the column is not locked. So it will move to B22 to B698, which will properly be our sample weight. Comma, and we have our array. So the array for index has all of the values we want to extract. The row number. Now this is the tricky part. And we have 6 records with 2 criteria. We're actually going to have, when we get done, this row number, we're going to have 6 row numbers. So the formula, the part of the formula we're going to create right now will find all 6 records, and it will return all 6 row numbers. So we could, for instance, have row 3, 8, 22, 112. Well, in order to, if we return a whole array of row numbers for all 6 records, we need to select the first one that occurs, and then the second, and then the third. So we'll use the small function to do that. Ready? Small. And small. We need an array here, and we're going to create a bunch of trues and falses before we say, hey, get the row number. Remember, there's going to be 6 different row numbers. So inside the small, if, and now we need to do location and Lung name for criteria. So I'm going to get location right there, Control Shift down arrow, and then F4 locked in all direction. When that's equal to whatever the criteria set up here is, F4 to lock that in all directions. Then if, and this is our second criteria, and we're going to select the names, Control Shift down arrow F4 equals whatever the name is there, F4. So the small right now is going to get a bunch of true falses there and a bunch of true falses there. Only when there's a true here and a true here. So location 2, Lung, true, true. So then we'll hit comma. And now what is the value if true? Well, our goal, remember, we're trying to get all the row numbers for the 6 records for index. So watch this. We're going to do row. And it doesn't matter which one of these since they're all the same. I'm going to select this one, Control Shift down arrow, and then F4. Now there's a problem. Row will give us an array of 22, 23, 24. And that's not going to work because we want 1, 2, 3. So from this row, minus, we're going to subtract row of this one. And hit F4, close parentheses. Now what this does is it goes 22 minus 22, which would be 0. And then 23 minus 23 is 1. The first one would be 22 minus 22, but because we locked it, when we get down here, it'll be row 23 minus this row 22 here, which will give us 1. But we don't want 0, 1, 2, 3. We want 1, 2, 3, so we'll just add 1. Now look at that. There's all our rows, right? If we were to highlight this and hit the F9 key, you can see it gives us all of the rows, right? Control Z. But this if, right, will give a bunch of trues and falses. Only when there's a true there and a true there will it select the row. So that's how we, using this construct here, get our row numbers then for the index. Now we want to close. That's the value of true. We don't need the value of false, so we close parentheses. And then we close parentheses on the second if. Now we're back to this. And the trick for extracting, because true, true, we're going to get 6 true trues and 6 row numbers in this gigantic array. But as we copy the formula down, we need the first one, the second one. So all we do is comma, and the kth means which smallest. And we're going to use our same number incrementer from up here, copy, which will give us the first smallest, then the second smallest, then the third smallest as we copy down. Close parentheses on the small. And now the index says, hey, we got the row number, which is what we wanted. Close parentheses on the index. Now we're back to the first if. Remember, if the rows are less than 6, then do the index. Otherwise, if they're not less than or equal to, what are we going to do? We want a blank, so comma blank. Now, close parentheses on the if there, and there it is. That big formula there is an array formula, so we have to hold Control Shift and Enter. And then I'm going to copy it over, and we have a problem here. We want custom number formatting, so I'm going to Control 1, go to Custom, and I'm going to up here do 0.00, and then I'm going to hit a single apostrophe and a single apostrophe. That is the apostrophe, the double quote, right? So it's shift. It's right next to the left of enter is double quote and that apostrophe. So I'm using that one there. Click OK, and now I can click and drag this down. Now you have to decide how far to drag this down. If they could all be the same exact number of records, then you'd have to drag it down to the 600. So I'm going to drag it down to 416. That's probably way more than I need, but you get to decide that. And now we have exactly what we want. We changed the criteria to location 1, and there are the dates and the sample weights. We come over here. We say we're going to select Bill. Bill had 15 at location 1, and so there they are. That's extracting records with a huge array formula with, at the heart of it, the index. All right, well, one last trick here. We want to click over on the 11. So here over on 11, what we have is a data set. Here's our sample. We want to extract the first value and the last value. And we have 6 days over here, 7 days. But it's just totally all over the place. So for this row right here, we need to extract the first one there. But we also need the last one. When we get down to this sample right here, we have one. There's our first one. There's our last one. And we want to be able to include blank. So it's all over the place. This is what it looks like. So for this one, we want the 11 for our first and the 12 for our last. When we're right here on this row, we want a 10, and we want 0.03 mg for our last one, which is right there. So how in the world are we going to do that? Well, let me blow this up just a little bit. Maybe like that much right there. The last value, we already did this when we did lookup. We're going to use equals lookup. And we can look up some particular value there, comma. But let me just highlight these, the lookup vector right here, or the array. Now, to get the last one, we saw this trick. We have to put some big number. We said the lookup video, we were looking up the last one in the row and the last one in a column. And we used the big number 9.9999999 E plus 307. We use scientific notations. But you got to think here. We don't need a number. None of these numbers are bigger than 1. So you can put any big number that you want. You could put 1 or 10 or 100, whatever you want, and that formula will do it. It'll calculate or retrieve the last value. Why? Because the way it works is it goes all the way through to the end. And when the last number in this row of numbers is still smaller than this number we're looking up, it returns that last one. Then I'm going to click and drag it down. And so that's how we did extracted the last one. Now the first one, how do we do that? Now this is actually a variation formula, a variation of a formula from Mr. Excel's Gurus Gone Wild book. And Aladdin at the Mr. Excel message board posted this one. This is a slight variation on that. Now we're going to use index equals index. And we're still going to be looking up the same 7-day range. And these are relative cell references over there. So that's our array, comma, and then the row number. We want the first non-blank one. So we're actually going to use the match. Oh, yeah, because the match function can find an ordinal position. But we need to think about the lookup value and the lookup array. Now, the lookup array, I'm going to type a comma. Oops, that's not a comma. And we're going to do the lookup array first. I'm going to highlight this whole range and say not, which is less than, greater than, and then double quote, which means not blank. So what we've done here is now, what is this going to return? This is, if I highlight this and hit the F9 key, it returns trues and falses. Control Z. Now, before I Control Z, think about what match does always. If I put some value here and there are duplicates, match will only take the first one. So match, if we put the word true right here, it looks through this list here, and even though there's lots of trues, it always retrieves, it's going to retrieve the first one. Now I'm going to Control Z because I don't want to hard code that. I'm going to come right here and type true. Now, comma, look at this. Match, we have the lookup value. Match, we have the lookup array. Match type, we're going to say 0 because we want an exact match. If we didn't put exact match, it would go all the way to the end and get the last true. Close parentheses on that. Close parentheses on, because we only need a row number here. Oh, wait a second. Remember our trick just a little bit ago? Comma would mean we skip over the row and go straight to the column right here. Because really, that's what we want. We have an array 1 column, 2 column, 3 column. But remember what we said just a little while ago. You can leave that off and just put a row number. Because there's only a row with columns here, index knows to take whatever number it is and apply it as the column. So I'm not going to type that extra comma. Just leave it there. Close parentheses. Now, this is an array right here. So we're going to, if we just hit Enter, it gives us a value error. So I'm going to hit F2 and then Control-Shift-Enter, which means it's an array formula. Double click and send it down. And sure enough, it got exactly what we want. Here we can see the fifth value. That's the first one here. It's the first one here. It's the first one. This 0.2. There's the first one right there. Now, there is an interesting variation on this. If you didn't want to enter it as an array, you could use this. Instead of what we did just this part. That's what we put inside of the match, and that meant we had to do Control-Shift-Enter. But if you put this part right here inside the index and say, hey, give me the row 1, there's only row 1, and then 0 for column, it gives me, then that means it will give you all of the columns in row 1 or just the row. This construction right here does not require Control-Shift-Enter. So you can just enter and then copy that down. You can see there's no curly brackets up there. Whereas here, there are, you can see the curly brackets because we did Control-Shift-Enter. So there's that trick. And before we go on to the last one, I have a 12th trick here. I actually have been saying 11 throughout the whole video, but I have a 12th one. I just want to point out what the index is doing right here. Index is grabbing that value right here. Index right here is grabbing that value and returning it to the cell. But the index can not only grab values or ranges of values like we saw when we use a 0 argument, it can return a reference. So not always does it return a value, but sometimes a reference. Let's click on this trick. And our setup here, we're going to use index to return a particular cell reference. So back over here, if instead of 10 milligrams, it was returning E4 to a formula, E4, that's index returning a reference. So here's our setup for here. We have some days, sales. And what we want to do is be able to use this drop down and select, say, day 3 and sum through day 3. So right now we want to get only the answer 4. Now, lots of us know how to use the offset function, sum, offset, and match to do exactly this. But offset is volatile. And sometimes for large spreadsheets, recalculating time can be considerable if you use volatile functions. So we'll see how to do the same thing here without offset using index. All right, ready? Equals sum. And I want to get this first B5. And then I'm going to type a colon. Now, when I type a colon, it puts in the B5, but I'm going to backspace. And now, in the context of this formula, we have a B5 and a colon. What our formula is expecting is a cell reference. So the fact that we use index here tells the context of this formula, colon, tells the index, you are not going to return the value. If we ask for the day 3 using index and match, it would return that $1. But because index is sitting after this colon, my cursor went crazy for a second there. Because it's sitting after the colon there, it'll know to return B7 here, B7 instead of the number 1. All right, index. The array is going to be this range here, comma, and our row number, we need 1, 2, 3 for day 3. So it's going to be match, just like we've been doing. And what are we going to, whoops, so we got match, and the lookup value is going to be day 3. Comma within this range right here, comma 0, close parentheses. So match is just going to return whatever row number for whatever day gets found over here. Now, all we need is a row number for index here, so we can close parentheses. We're back to our sum. We close parentheses, and now just enter. Now, if we change this to day 7, then it's adding all the way up through there, day 7. Now, let's see how this works. We're going to do formula evaluator. So formula auditing on the formulas ribbon, evaluate formula. In 2003, you go to the tools menu, formula auditing evaluate. The keyboard shortcut is Alt-TUF, Alt-TUF. And all I'm going to do is click evaluate. It's going through now. See, index right now is underlined. It means the next click is evaluate that. And it returns B11, not the actual value in B11, which is 2. And that's because the colon and the context of this formula tells index, forget it. You are not returning a value. You're returning a cell reference. Then I evaluate. Let's just look over here. I have it explicitly. Exact part right here. I just put that into the cell right here. And when it's after an equal sign, what does it do? It returns that actual value. So index, depending on the context, colon, equal sign, or other argument, will return a value or a reference. Hey, that's 12 amazing tricks for index and match. When we come back, we have some great tricks for choose, the choose function, another lookup function. See you then.